Hi, my name is Gerhard Schwantner and welcome to Selling Power's Daily Report. Today we have the pleasure of meeting with Dr. Kerry Solkowitz. He is an MD and a psychoanalyst. Could we talk about a situation that happens frequently in business, which is when you have a boss where you know that they're power hungry and they're immature at the same time?
If you want to have a leader who promotes creativity and independence of mind and free thinking and productivity, that's the wrong kind of boss to have. Dealing with one is hard, in part because of the very power dynamics that exist. They're the boss, after all. You like to have a boss who you can talk to and give some feedback to upwards, but these kinds of authoritarian, difficult bosses are predictably very resistant to that kind of feedback. In fact, if anything, one of the consequences can be that you get punished for trying to do something about the very problem that exists. What I'd suggest is to find other people who feel the same way that you do about your boss. Usually that's not so hard to do. I'm not suggesting creating a mutiny, but getting together with some other people who feel the same way, making sure that you're testing out your perceptions against those of some of your peers, and oftentimes your perceptions turn out to be accurate. Once you do that, then to try to think about who you can talk to outside of the boss. Sometimes you can try talking to this authoritarian leader, but it's often unrewarding at best and harmful at worst. Talking to the head of HR, if that person is really an advocate, can be helpful. Talking to a trusted peer of the boss can help. But unfortunately, it involves a certain amount of going around the boss initially to see if you can get some traction about just the very nature of the problems that you're encountering working there.
Would the objective be now in that situation to get support and get comfort, or to get isolation, or to create a change initiative?
Maybe any or all of the above. Creating protection from that boss seems like an appealing solution, but it's never a very satisfying one. It tends not to last very long. A change initiative, of course, is the most ambitious approach. If by change you mean changing the boss, that's probably the best solution, but it's one of the hardest.
Have you ever had an experience where you were called into a company where you had that problem, where the entire group sat down at a table and everybody pointed a finger at one person?
Usually doesn't happen quite that way. That tends to be a confrontational meeting, and a meeting that ends up humiliating the person that everybody's pointing the fingers at, and that's never helpful. In fact, one of the things you want to try to avoid is provoking this authoritarian boss. That's part of the problem, and if you point your fingers at him, you may make matters worse, not better. But certainly sometimes in group settings, these kinds of feelings come pouring out. People in organizations in general, and particularly in the kind of situation that you're describing, where there's an authoritarian, autocratic leader, they're miserable. They're absolutely miserable. And they are absolutely hungry for the opportunity to talk about that experience and to get some help with it.
How would you deal with the leader?
Part of what you need to do is to assess the capacity of that leader for change. There are a variety of reasons why someone becomes that way, but what I'm interested in is not just how are they, but what is their capacity for self-awareness. In other words, do they have the capacity to receive feedback about their leadership style? Are they even interested in what kind of leader they are? And do they have any desire to gain some insight into the impact that they're having on their people, on their organization? If they are, that's good news, of course, and then you can work with them in a coaching relationship. You can engage this observing part of themselves, their minds, and work with them over time, and soften their rough edges and turn them into more effective leaders. Other times, and it's really this self-awareness aspect that I think is really the crucial determinant. If they don't have that, if they're convinced, if they're pathologically certain that they're doing it the right way, then nobody's going to be able to make much of a dent in that, and the solution is probably to replace them.
What is the CEO's role in that case? To come and call you in and help facilitate the change or reduce that person's power by moving them to another position?
I'm often called in by CEOs when there's a senior executive who is like the kind of person that you're describing. And what's interesting is that the CEO has multiple stakes in what happens. And narrowly looked at, that kind of problematic executive is causing all sorts of problems in his or her organization. They cause problems in productivity, creativity, teamwork, communication, and all the things that you would predict. But what's interesting, and what really gets the CEO's attention sometimes, is that these kinds of bosses are often counter to the prevailing culture of the organization. They really disrupt the kind of culture that the CEO is trying to propagate. And if these people are allowed to stay in their position for too long, not only do they do the kind of damage that I was talking about to their organization, they undermine the CEO's authority and credibility.
And they contaminate the culture.
Exactly. So the CEO has all kinds of reasons for wanting to make a change.
Well, thank you, Dr. Solkowitz, for shedding some light on a very challenging problem. Tune in tomorrow. We're going to continue our conversation and we dig into sales.